From economy to workforce, we have a little shift in our timing here on the agenda, but another thing that we've been critically challenged with over the last couple of years, and I hear from everyone, how do we handle technology and productivity in order to make up for the challenges we're having in workforce? And to present for us today is our board member, very proud to have Rashaad Bajwa, one of our board members at NJBIA. Come on up, Rashaad.
Thank you. So I've been told to give either a 15-minute or a 30-minute version of this, depending on when other speakers make it here. So you'll let me know when to keep going. So I want to tell you, I'll tell you a little bit about myself in a second, but before we get to that, we're driving here today, and I have my two daughters here. They love that I'm going to call them out on that. Ava and Zoe, and then their friend Erica, who are on spring break from Petty High School in Hightstown, New Jersey. And Ava just got her license recently. She just got her license recently, and we're driving up on the turnpike. And exit 10 is crazy for a new driver. I mean, it's crazy for somebody who's been driving for 30 years. And we're taking the exit, and we're talking about how complicated it is. And then she asks me, is this rush hour? And what's interesting is, 8:15 is kind of rush hour around here. Maybe not if you're going to New York, it's a little bit earlier. So a lot of details relating to that, so I like to give her facts. But the reality is, rush hour has changed. Rush hour has changed a lot. And it's about work. And so you have real estate, you have technology, you have rush hour. The world that they're growing up in, 2 of their 4 years in high school were remote. So even their version of prom and their version of every facet of what we experienced is different, and their rush hour is different. How they work is probably going to be different. When COVID happened, I think we presumed, or I'll speak for myself, I presumed it was, because it was my first pandemic I had experienced. I don't know about you guys. But so I didn't know what to expect, but I presumed we'd at some point just go back to normal. And that meant, from a work point of view, we would go back to the offices that we always had. So let me tell you a little bit about our offices. So Integris is an IT services firm, so we're a people business. Our product is our people. And for over 25 years, that was people in an office. Now, we dabbled with remote workers here and there. We dabbled with a little bit of offshoring, but we always knew we wanted people in the local market, and that was best done out of an office. Also, in order to retain talent, to get talent, to retain talent, we're in the tech space. So you needed cool offices. You needed to care about things like culture. I definitely cared about culture. We would constantly have events. We'd try to engage with our folks. And the only way I knew how to do it, because it's the world that I grew up in, was in person. They know a whole bunch of different versions of this world. They know how to go to high school from an iPad in your kitchen. I didn't know how to do that. I also need to learn how to run a business a little bit differently. And so, man, we're learning. And so we have to be better managers, there's no doubt. So we have to put new tools in place. But Integris, the IT services firm, we grew rapidly. And so over the pandemic, actually, believe it or not, we grew from roughly about 100 people to over 700 across, or not over 700, somewhere between 600 to 700 now, over 11 states and 22 offices. So that's a lot of folks that you can't see in a physical office anymore, and you got to figure out how to manage that. So what I want to share with you is a little bit about that experience, what it's like to manage that workforce and figure out how to keep them productive. We have another business as well, which is called 360score.me, and that's a product that's about employee engagement. And employee engagement during COVID, and then employee engagement during this post-COVID time. So I'm going to share a little bit of data about some of the surveys and feedback that we've gotten about remote work, culture, productivity, and the different views on that over time. So the story has another clincher, though, that we're figuring out. And that is, we've spread across the country. We have all of these offices. But right now, we spend about $5 million a year on offices that are 95% of the time empty. That's depressing. That's really depressing. Now, it's complicated, though, what you do about that. You know, you're tempted to just be like, if we were wasting $5 million of your money, you normally are, you know, let's do something about it. But wait a second, if we get rid of these offices, what is it going to do to our company? We only know how to run a company with offices. What is it going to do to our culture? Is our staff going to be less productive because we can't keep an eye on them? Or is having to have staff in an office to keep them productive by keeping an eye on them, is that just say something about our staff and the way we run the business? So we're learning all of these things. And I got into IT. I didn't get into to figure out all these problems. So by the way, we have not figured it out. So I'm just sharing with you what we've experienced. And where we're at right now and what we are thinking are good decisions. And we'll figure that out as to whether they are actually good or not. But we have instinct. We're going by our instinct as to what's going to be good for our people, what's going to be good for our clients. But it's not always the same, meaning what the client wants from us, what our staff want from us, what we want from our staff. We sometimes use the same words, but they mean different things. And so I want to share with you a little bit about that as well. So we'll start with COVID, right? We went through the COVID, everyone went home. Everyone went home, and then at some point we got vaccines. We're like, okay, it's safer. We're coming back in the office. Okay, everyone has to come back in the office 3 days a week. That just felt like a good number. Because 5, everyone would be angry. 0, why do we have offices? 3. Okay, everyone goes, but there's no coordination. So we have 3 days a week, people are coming back into the office. I go into the office because I have to lead. So I have to be there, role model. I am now going to, after 2 years, figure out how to put on clothes that are presentable, get in front of people, and get into meetings. Wait, but the problem is I go into the office, and everyone I need to meet with, or not everyone, most of them, are not in the office. They're all over the country. Even the ones in the office, this wasn't one of their 3 days in the week. You know, it just wasn't coordinated. So I'm driving to the office to sit in my office to get onto Teams. And that's horrible because most of my conversations are very private. So now I'm in the office, even though I have a private office, it's less private than my home. And I'm now having conversations, closing my door. Wait, I'm in the office with my door closed now. To what? To rationalize my office lease? I mean, that really is what it ended up being. Because even if I want to tell myself it was for culture, I'm locked in the office by myself. What am I doing? I feel like a crazy person. Even better, I'm making 600 people be crazy people too and do the same thing. Half of them resenting me for it. And all for that, I get the privilege of paying $5 million in lease. This is just, it doesn't make any sense. We have to move on. So we decided, let's survey our folks. I have a sense of what we need for our organization, just kind of how we've been running the business for 25 years. But let's get a sense from them. I feel like we're losing something. The technology is great, but the technology is also complicated. When we were in COVID and we were all at home, Integris, what we do, we bring IT, we empower people with technology. We enabled remote productivity. Teams, Zoom, video conferencing, Slack, all of these technologies that allow you to collaborate no matter where you are in the world. Amazing. If the pandemic had not been COVID-19, but it had been like COVID 1997 when we started Integris, it would have been a totally different game. That was like PC Anywhere, dial-up modems. There would have been no video, let me just assure you. Probably the audio would have been horrible, and we would have all been like, screw it, we're getting COVID, we got to go in the office, otherwise we go out of business. But technology allowed us to be more productive. And so during COVID, it was actually pretty clear cut because we were all remote. we were all terrified to come into a room together because we'd kill each other. And so we were all fine because everyone was remote. And it seemed like it kind of worked. It was actually really cool. I didn't have to waste time commuting. Collaborating with people who were out of state, video conferencing now is way more productive than it used to be. The audio quality was pretty good, all of those sort of things. And so during COVID, that was fine. Then we get post-COVID, and now we actually can go back into the office and not kill each other. So that's what we do in order to maintain our culture. We go back in the office. Some of us are now in the office. Some of us are remote. How has that been for you guys when some of your meeting is in the office in a conference room and some are remote? I will tell you my experience, and I'm a tech guy, and we set up the tech to do this. It's horrible. It's the worst of both. It's not as good as being in person, and is not as good as everyone being remote. Just because of the nature of setting up a camera in a room with audio, and we're all kind of a little bit far away from it, and who is the camera pointed at, it's just a lot easier when you're at your desk at home. Just a lot more clear. So we now are in this weird world where we're in this limbo, where we're moving towards, or we're trying to maintain the world that we had in the past because of some attachment or some version of our culture will get ruined or our productivity will get ruined, and this world that we live in right now. So we surveyed our folks, and we presumed we knew the answer about what this new world was to our culture. And we presumed, meaning the leadership, presumed that everyone was just yearning for the days of the past, that our culture was better when we were all in the office. And the crazy thing with the data was that's not what our people said. Our people said different things depending on their role. Managers all said, our culture has taken a beating because I can't get my team together. Productivity was a coin flip. Some people were on the beach not doing anything because they didn't have kind of that oversight over them, but that was very few. Those are people, frankly, that were on the beach when they were sitting in a cube in the office too, mentally. Most people were working more than ever. They just, if anything, the concern was the reverse. They can't even turn it off. We hire good people. So managers felt that culture had taken a hit. Individual folks, they saw remote work, or rather the flexibility that we were providing them to work remotely, as a boon to culture. But what's interesting is, what do they call culture? When I say culture, I'm thinking of the Integris culture. And that means, how do we get along with each other? How do we collaborate? How do we work with each other? That's not what they define. Their definition of culture is my happiness at Integris, which is, by the way, is fair. I can't judge them. I can't say, no, you need to think of culture the way I do. They're going to think of culture whatever way they want to, or they will move on. Just because of, that's the workforce that we're in right now, or the competitive workforce that we're in. And so remote work, if we didn't force them to do something they didn't want, was flexibility. It was a benefit. Technology made our lives better, or made their lives better. They're not wasting time in the car. They're not going in circles around exit 10 trying to figure out how to get onto Route 27. They're just having breakfast, exercising, getting them however appropriate they need to be to get on a camera. And that's pretty cool. They're saving money, they're saving time, they're happier. The culture at Integris for them is better now than it was before. And it just took a pandemic to teach us that. It's not all like roses, though, because managing a remote workforce is more complicated. It was way easier when you could just see people in a room, or actually, was it easier? It felt like it was easier. Maybe we just didn't notice the waste when they were in an office. because it changed from keeping you accountable from showing up to keeping you accountable for results. I mean, I think we can all agree we want to be in the world where we're keeping people accountable for results. But you know what that requires? That requires you to be a much better manager. Because it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to be a manager when all you got to do is make sure that they punch in on time. If you want to measure productivity, that means you got to understand metrics. You have KPIs. You have technology that tracks that. You got to report on it. You got to know, this is my team. These are their KPIs. I can tell just looking at the numbers who's mentally or physically at the beach and who is, okay, we're going to go a little bit longer. Okay. And who is wasting time and super productive. So technology plays a role. Our business has changed as well. You know, it started when we first started Integris. We were just okay. We're good. I'm going to make it shorter again. Okay. Good. So that's the story. So what do you guys think? I mean, we're all struggling with this. We have not figured this out. But the world has changed. The world they're going to grow up in, this is the new workforce that's coming right now. They're not in the workforce yet. They're just right on the edge. This is the world that they've seen. This is the world they're going to hold us accountable to. So hopefully that was helpful. Thanks.